March by Moonlight by Kenji Miyazawa, translated by John Bester. One night, Koichi, in his straw sandals, was walking briskly along the level ground beside the railway tracks. He'd have been fined, of course, if he got caught. Worse still, if a train had come along with a long pole or something sticking out of a window, he'd almost certainly be knocked down and killed. That evening, though, no linesman appeared, nor did Koichi encounter a train with a pole sticking out of the window. What did happen, though, was something else, something quite extraordinary. A 9-day moon was hanging in a sky full of mackerel clouds. The clouds seemed almost to be reeling with all the moonlight they'd soaked up into their bellies. Occasionally, a cold-looking star would wink through a gap in them. Proceeding at a smart pace, Koichi had got to a point where the lights of a small station shone plainly in the distance. There were bright red points of light and vague purple lights like burning sulfur, so that if you looked at them through half-closed lids, it was as if a great castle was standing there. Without warning, a signal pole on the right shook itself with a clatter and let down a horizontal white bar at the top drop to a diagonal position. There was nothing the slightest bit strange about this. All that had happened was that the signal had changed, something that had occurred at least 14 times in the course of an evening. What happened next, though, was a shock. The line of telephone poles that had been moaning in the wind on the left-hand side of the tracks began, all at once and with great dignity, to march off to the north. Each of them had 6 china epaulets and was crowned with a zinc hat and a spike sticking out of it. Each bounced along on its single leg. As it passed Koichi, gave him a hard sideways glance, as though it didn't think much of him. The moaning grew louder and louder, till finally it turned into a real old-fashioned marching song. We're stiff and well-ordered, a disciplined breed. Yet no other army can beat us for speed. One particular pole went past with its shoulders squared so tight that its very crosspieces seemed to creak. Then Koichi noticed that opposite them, another column of poles with 6 crosspieces and 22 china epaulets was also on the move, singing the same kind of song. A full 15,000 with one single thought, in single file marching to keep the wires taut. For some reason, 2 poles came limping along together with their arms linked, their heads lolling as though they were completely worn out. They were puffing out of the corner of their mouths and staggering as though they might fall down at any moment. Then, a brisk-looking pole behind them bellowed, "Move along there, you two! Look, the wires are going slack!" "We can't! We're too tired," they moaned. "Our feet have started to rot, the tar on our boots, and everything is a sticky mess." "I said, get a move on," shouted the other pole impatiently. "If either of one of you gives in, you get 15,000 men in trouble. Come along, get going." The 2 were obliged to totter on again, and the rest of the column came marching on behind them. Oh, see on his shoulders the pride of each pole, the white epaulets that are proof of his role. The figures of the 2 poles slowly disappeared in the direction of the distant blue-green woods. The moon emerged from behind the mackerel clouds, and suddenly all around was light. By now, the troops were in high spirits. Some of them deliberately swaggered and smiled sideways at Koichi as they went past. Just then, To his surprise, he saw that the other soldiers with 3 arms and bright red epaulets were marching beyond the Poles with 6 arms. He got the impression that their marching song had a different tune and different words to it, but the song on this side was so loud that he couldn't catch what they were singing. The soldiers on this side came tramping steadily on. The coldest of winters won't make a pole flag, nor fierce summer heat cause his shoulders to sag. On and on they came like the flow of a river, till Koichi began to get tired just watching them and let his mind go blank. They all looked at him as they went by, but his head hurt, and he stared down at the ground in silence. Suddenly, he heard a hoarse voice in the distance mingling with the sound of the soldiers singing. Hop, hop, left, right! Startled, he raised his head and saw a short, yellow-faced old man in a scruffy gray greatcoat striding along beside the column, looking it over as he came and shouting orders. Left, right, left, right. When the old man's eyes fell upon them, the troops went as stiff as ramrods and marched on, looking neither left nor right. Drawing level with Koichi, the man peered at him for a while out of the corner of his eye, then turned and gave the command, Break! Step! At this, the Poles began to move in a more relaxed way and picked up their song again. Lances to the left of them, and lances to the right. The old man stopped in front of Koichi, and bending forward a little said, Good evening. Been watching the march, have you? Yes, I have. I see. Well then, I suppose it can't be helped. Let's make friends. Here, shake hands. Pushing back the tattered sleeve of his greatcoat, he extended a large yellow hand. Reluctantly, Koichi put out his hand too. There, the old man said and grasped it in his own. And as he did so, his eyes gave off a crackling blue sparks, and Koichi's body tingled all over so that he almost fell over backward. The man chuckled. You felt that, didn't you? But that's only a mild one. If I shook your hands just a bit more strongly, well, then you'd be charcoal. The troops were still marching relentlessly by. Come hill or come dale, we take all in our stride. Koichi was quite scared by now, and his teeth began to chatter. The old man, who had been looking up to see what was happening to the moon in the clouds, noticed how pale and shaky he was, and must have felt sorry for him, as he said in a rather quieter voice, I'm General Electricity, you know. That calmed Koichi down a bit. General Electricity? What kind of electricity is that? This made the old man look a bit sulky. What a stupid child, he said. I'm a general, in charge of everything to do with electricity. The chief, the boss. It must be fun to be the boss, said Koichi wistfully. Oh, yes it is, the general said, his face crinkling with delight. I mean, they're all my troops. The engineers, and the dragoons, and the fusiliers over there. He suddenly looked solemn, and puffing out one of his cheeks, gazed up at the sky. Then he bellowed at a soldier who happened to be going by. You there! What are you gawking around you for? The Pole all but leapt up in the air with alarm. His legs sagged, and he hastily faced the front again as he marched on. The other Poles came on in a steady stream. You know the famous story, I suppose. There was a man who lived in England and his father who lived in Kirkshire, in Scotland. The son sent his old man a telegram. Wait, I have it here. I took it down in my notebook. The general took out his notebook, then a large pair of spectacles which he put on with an air of importance before continuing. You understand English? Send my boots at once, right? So this stupid old fellow in Kirkshire gets in a panic and hangs the boots up on my telegraph wires. He chuckled. It put me on the spot, I can tell you. It isn't just in England that you find that kind of thing, either. It was all over the barracks last December, and there were 5 or 6 recruits. You'll find them in any army, who, if they were told by the sergeant to go and put out the lights, would huff and puff trying to blow them out. You won't find anyone like that among my soldiers, mind you. It was the same here in your village, too, when they first got electricity. People there were always saying, "Oh, they must burn at least 100 drums of oil every month to produce so much light." He roared with laughter. Funny, eh? But it's not so funny if, like me, you understand the principle of the conservation of energy, or the second law of thermodynamics. What do you think, though? You're a fine-looking lot, aren't they? They say so themselves, actually, in that marching song of theirs. With stern faces looking straight ahead, those of them passing the time raise their voices even louder.
No wonder we Poles are so famous worldwide.
Just then, far off down the line, 2 small burning red lights appeared. This threw the old man into a panic. "Damn it, there's a train coming. It would be awful if somebody saw us. We'd have to stop the march." Holding up one hand, he turned to the column of telegraph poles and shouted, "Army, halt!" The poles all stopped dead in their tracks and quickly assumed their usual appearance, and the marching song turned back into an ordinary moaning in the wind. The train came roaring along. The coal burned bright in the driver's cab, with the stocky black figure of the stoker standing in front of it. The windows of the passenger cars, though, were all in total darkness. "Oh, hell, the lights are out!" exclaimed the old man. "We can't allow that. It's a disgrace." And doubling up like a rabbit, he darted underneath the moving train. "Look out!" cried Koichi, trying to stop them, when suddenly the windows of the passenger cars filled with light, and a small child at one of them raised his arms in passing and shouted, "The lights are on! Hooray!" The telegraph poles hummed softly. A signal clattered as it went up. The moon went behind the mackerel clouds again, and the train seemed already to have arrived at the station.